So Ludovic, thank you for joining us. You're a professor at Side Business School in the UK. I wanted to ask you, do you think the way the industry reports private equity returns is satisfactory?
Yes, I think there is a bit of an issue there with the way the industry reports their returns in general, and in particular how LPs communicate their returns, how investors communicate their returns. And the main issue is that they use often internal rates of return. It's actually GIPS standards. So there is a standard that is sometimes being used called GIPS, and that standard says to use internal rates of return, and that leads to some results very often that are not quite right. They give a very false impression or image of what true returns have been. So in that sense, yeah, I think there is a big problem on performance reporting.
Do you think the wider reporting that could go on is being brought out by the latest drive for transparency in the industry?
So the transparency debate is, I think, separate from this, because investors in private equity have always had the data necessary to compute returns properly. The fact that they haven't computed them properly is because they have used the wrong method, but transparency in itself is not affecting that aspect of things.
In terms of driving more truer computations or return calculations, do you see LPs then changing how that should be done, or is it a GP effort, or is it a coordinated?
So certainly the LPs are becoming more professional, and so as part of them becoming more professional, they are more interested in having the right or better picture of what past performance have been, etc. But it remains, the benchmarking aspects of things remains relatively simple, and they usually take only like large cap indices as benchmarks, which is not an obvious choice. They don't look much at the robustness to using different benchmarks, using different NAV models, etc., and often use IRs. So they're becoming more professional, and it's getting better. They are paying attention a bit to this issue, but there is still a way to go until we are up to the same standards as other asset classes, really.
Do you think that helps when private equity firms become more institutional and look across a diverse asset class, that they pick up those different reporting requirements and apply them better in how they report on private equity?
Maybe. I don't know if there's that much institutionalization that has happened yet that would enable to draw that conclusion, but that may happen. Yeah.
I suppose looking at some of the listed firms or some of the sort of multinational asset managers, which a lot of PE firms have now become, do you think that's going to drive throughout the industry?
What it brings you is that now you can go and download the quarterly earnings report of Blackstone, and then you have 150 pages on what they are doing, the source of their income, etc. But in terms of returns, out of these 150 pages of Blackstone document, there is a quarter of a page on returns where they just show you multiples and IRs for the 7-8 funds they've raised before. That's all there is, right?
Yep.
So which is a bit strange, maybe, right? You would probably like to have a bit more effort on using different benchmarks, getting a bit more detail on like what. If you just give someone like multiples and IR, there is no way to know if this is good or not, right? So I actually have often this discussion, journalists telling me, oh, can you comment on the latest quarterly reports of Blackstone? They have put their return there on page 132, and how they're good or not. So I cannot tell, they're just reporting IRs and multiples. What can I do with that? I can see they're not terrible, but I don't know how good they are. I don't know how they compare to listed equity. I don't know anything. From these numbers, I cannot tell anything. So there is very little information on past performance on these reports. So more information is being produced, but the part on performance is the same as 20 years ago, when people would just tell you the IR and the multiple of the fund.
What about some of the non-financial reporting that's coming through? So ESG initiatives, job creation, data.
Yeah, so there's the sorts of information that now people report more and more on, and that's fine. My discussion here and joined more like on the benchmarking of past performance, on risk evaluation of portfolios and so on, and this is pretty poor. But certainly what you're mentioning is what is getting more and more covered in these reports.
So academically, where do you see the interest, where do you see the challenge and opportunity for private equity to do more?
On measuring returns well, and then on measuring risk as well. So measuring risk in particular is difficult because it's a non-traded asset class, so it's very hard to use standard measures of risk. So on the risk side, it's also like a very big challenge.
Well, Ludovic, thank you very much for coming in, and
Welcome.
look forward to seeing you next year.
Thank you very much.